Hello! A video is long overdue, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today is a controversial topic, but hopefully this will be beneficial to you. It was really fun for me to write the script and really think about it because this is something that I'm very passionate about. And from the video title, you probably saw that it was writing longhand versus writing on the computer. So before we begin, like you probably know I like to do, I will start with some definitions. So when I talk about writing on the computer, I mean just typing it up, the first draft, into Word, into Scrivener, into whatever you may be using. And then writing longhand is when my notebook's all the way over there, so I don't have a prop, but you have a notebook, you open it, and you write your entire book in it. So you probably already knew all that, but I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. So about 3 years ago, I heard a talk given on this topic, and it blew my mind. I had no idea that there was research on this, but there actually is. And what was really exciting to me is that it established with scientific evidence all the things that I've held as opinion, my own opinion. I thought that's all they were, just an opinion, but it turns out it's more than that. So we will first start out with paper versus screen for both writing and reading. There have been several studies done on this topic, and in one study specifically, a set of students was told to learn a set of facts that were laid out for them in a document. Some students were given printed paper copies of the facts, and others were given computers or tablets. According to the results, the students remember content better when reading it on paper instead of on a screen. Their comprehension was higher too, and they did better on the tests. So people do better reading on paper and remembering things if it's on physical paper. But how does that compare to writing? Well, you might or might not be surprised when I say that people are more creative when they write longhand than when they're typing it on the computer. Research has been done on this topic, but not as much as reading on screen versus paper. But there's still enough data out there to get a really good idea of what the evidence is pointing to. There's a certain website, a specific website that has this article. I will link it down below if you're interested. They have this one study on there and all the results and everything. This website does a really good job of summarizing the argument for paper. The little research that has been done illustrates that when writing on paper, the brain automatically creates a ton of complex brainwaves. This means we are thinking better, we're more creative, etc., etc. Our brain is more active. And when writing on a screen, it doesn't do that. Our brain just sends regular brainwaves, not nearly as complex, not nearly as many. It's just the same as texting or jotting a note down on paper or something like that. It's not activating the creative section of our brain nearly as much. We're not thinking nearly as much. I thought that was so fascinating, just the fact that writing our stories on paper does something to our brains that typing it on the computer does not. I had a feeling it was that way, but I didn't know until I heard about the research, then went and read it myself. I've always noticed that me personally, I do way better when I write on paper, and that's why I did that. It turns out it might have been the better way to go, but I'll finish my argument here and see what you think at the end. So, something that writers have a really hard time with that I do not, I kind of laugh at them, but also I sympathize. I'm not just like, ha ha ha. Something that writers have a huge problem with when they're typing it on the computer is they'll be typing, oh wait, up here, that doesn't look right. So they'll go back and edit what they already did, and then it slows down their progress in actually writing the first draft. When you're writing on paper, your attention is forward, not backward, and you can't really change what you already did unless you're writing with pencil, which I will get to in a minute. But even when you're writing with pencil, you're less likely to erase it and rewrite it because it's harder. Not that much harder, but when you're on the computer, you can just click up and but on paper, you have to physically erase all of it and then rewrite it. So it is mentally harder to go back and edit when you're writing on paper. And another reason why I think writing on paper is way better is that you can bring your writing. Why am I having so much trouble today? You can bring your writing anywhere, anytime, in the middle of the woods, at a cafe, on the airplane, in the car, anywhere. You don't need internet. You don't need access to a plug or anything to charge your computer or anything. You don't, because you're just carrying around a notebook and a pen and maybe some notes on your phone, but you probably have notes in your notebook. At least I do. So you can bring it everywhere. All right, pens versus pencils. Now, this was really fascinating to me. Personally, I've always preferred pens. I love how it doesn't smear, mostly. It comes in all sorts of different colors. You don't need to sharpen them. You don't need to erase. Some people don't like the mess of scribbling things out and keep writing, but I don't mind. But let's get into pens versus pencils. Although pencils are handy in correcting mistakes, since they're equipped with an eraser, they cause many problems for most people. First thing, they cause tired hand syndrome, which I've heard that's what it's called. It's an actual thing. Because the marks it makes is so light, some people have the tendency to press harder. This causes their hands to tire out faster, especially in children. Now you know why they're always complaining about their hands hurting. But I've definitely noticed that when I write with a pencil, my hand gets so much more tired so much more quickly, and I can definitely verify that. The second thing against pencils is that it's mentally distracting to correct a mistake. The brain switches focus when you flip over the pencil, rub out the mistake, flip it over again, and find where you left off. And then your brain switches back, and then you continue. That makes my brain tired just thinking about it. You're multitasking while you're trying to write. Which writing is hard enough already. You don't need a pencil to mess that all up. Since your brain is forced to switch tasks when you go back to rub out a mistake, it lowers creativity. Third thing is pencils make noise. This isn't a problem for some people, but for others, it is. It really bothers me. When pencils make noise and it bothers someone, they can no longer concentrate. When I use a pencil, my mind doesn't focus on my writing. It focuses on the sound of the pencil, and I just want to get rid of the sound. But then if I write lighter, my hand gets tired, then I have to take a break or write harder, then there's the sound, a vicious cycle here. And when your brain is distracted, it cannot produce as much creative material. To be honest, I'm really biased on this one. You've probably noticed. I use pens all the time, from schoolwork to writing my book draft. they're my best friends. I have a huge stash of them in my dresser where I keep all my different crafting supplies. Pens seem to have all the positives that pencils lack. Because bold, thick pens are available, your hand doesn't need to press as hard to create a smooth, bold black line. It's satisfying. To correct a mistake, you simply cross it out and keep going. This does not distract your brain as much because it doesn't have to flip back and forth between things that you gotta do. And it's so fast that your brain can just keep going in the creative process. It stays focused on the creative side. Pens also make noise, but not very much compared to pencils. The only downside I can think for using a pen would be crossing out your mistakes. Like I mentioned, this makes anything you write look sloppy, and this bothers some people, and that's okay, it's just their preferences. A lot of things are typed up nowadays after you write it down on paper, so it doesn't really change much, in my opinion. It doesn't really matter. I know if this is something new to you, you probably have some objections. Whenever I tell someone, oh, I write longhand, I just get this. They give me that sort of look, and they're like, you seriously do that? Really? It's much more convenient to type it up on the computer. I know where you're coming from, if that's your objection, and I just tell people, if writing longhand produces better quality and more creative writing than if typing on the computer, I think that's worth it. I really think it is. I think it's worth having to type it up afterwards if it's better quality. So that's what I'm going to say about that. Because people just want to do the fast version, get it all done. They want it to be, they don't want any long processes that are not necessarily necessary. And I get that. I understand it. Sometimes I do not like typing up 100,000 word novel. It does get boring. It does get annoying. But there are ways that I keep it from being useless. Because even though it does take a long time, we have to read through our manuscripts when we're done anyway, right? So I consider typing up my manuscript to be the first round of editing. It's when I take notes on what needs fixed, what I should improve, if there are any plot holes, any inconsistencies, if there are chapters or scenes that are too long or too short. Anything that needs fixed or changed, I will make a note of it, or I will fix it as I'm typing it up, because I will finish a chapter, then I'll go back and edit all this stuff. Sometimes I make huge edits while I'm typing it up. And so it saves me in the long run of reading through the manuscript first and then doing all this stuff. I stack my projects. I stack the things that I need to do for the book. I don't just write, type, all the editing stages. I write and type and edit, then I edit some more. It's not useless. So maybe that convinces you that it's worth it. Maybe it doesn't. Whatever your preference is, I'm not in control of that. I'm just putting it out there for you to do as you will. So though it's not been popularized yet, I believe that writing longhand seems to be the way to go. The evidence is there, you just have to decide what to do with it. Sure, if you write on paper, you have to type it up, so what? You're more creative, and you get to do a whole lot more when you do type it up than if you type it up on the computer when you're writing it. Because like we mentioned earlier, your brain will remember things better that you wrote by hand so you'll more likely remember the things that you need to fix when you go to edit. I hope that makes sense, because it did not make sense when it came out. The curse of being a content creator. So, I hope this was helpful, inspiring, or motivating for you. Go ahead and try it. And do you think this is worth it? Do you think writing longhand is worth it? Let me know. I would love to talk about this. And did I convince you to try it? I'll see you guys next time with another video. Bye.